Welcome to Leadership Kung Fu with your hosts, Sandi Verrecchia and Jennifer Long.
So welcome to another episode of Leadership Kung Fu, where we explore leadership issues that are coming up in the world that Jen and I work in and bring them to you on our podcast through the lens of Kung Fu, which is around understanding problems and mastering, practicing the way to solve them and mastering it through trying and trial and error. And so today, we're going to talk about a topic that we think is pretty cool. But first, let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Sandi Verrecchia from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. And I'm here with my esteemed co-host, Jen Long from Own Up in Colorado. How are you, Jen?
I am good, Sandi. Nice to see you.
You too. So last month, we talked about leaders that outsource their thinking and sort of take everything on themselves, and how teams are losing their problem-solving muscles. And so we had a whole podcast on that, which was quite interesting. And this one sort of builds on it, right? I think that today we're going to be talking about the expectation drift and how vague leadership can break execution. And I think it's a pretty topical topic right now and timely topic for many organizations that are sort of going through this and probably haven't named it and don't really understand what it is. So, Jen, why don't you start off with what is the expectation drift?
What the heck is expectation drift, and how do I know I'm suffering from that? Right. So it's one of those things. The easy test is if you bring your direction to the room and say, I want you to write down the top 3 priorities that are due in the next 90 days and see if what they put on a list is what you have in your head. And chances are what you're going to find is that stuff doesn't line up. So when we think about expectation drift, what we're really thinking about is it was what happens when we think that we've agreed to some kind of change, right? We've had a conversation, but we didn't really say specifically out loud what that was, right? Sometimes it's because something in the world and the context really did change for us. And sometimes it's I had a change of heart as a leader. I know I have a piece of information that's changed direction, but we never actually go back and reset an expectation, right? Which means I didn't really say here's what's different. Here's what good looks like now. Here's what we know now. Here's the new deadline, and here's the resources and constraints about that, because that's really what an expectation sounds like. And most of the time when we have expectation drift, it's because we think we talked about it.
Yeah.
Right? We had that conversation, but what we really didn't do is reset anything. That's what expectation drift is.
Or ask, did you, and it's sort of like, so it's like communication 101, right? Like, did you hear what I say? Please repeat it back to me. Right. And I think that it's such an important thing, but so what we think we say, people don't always hear what we think we know what we say. They don't hear what we thought we said and all that. It's like a telephone game. And I played that as a kid at birthday parties. Yeah.
Exactly. And people don't ask. They don't ask. Because sometimes if you ask the thing of, so what are you really asking me to do? Well, does that mean I should stop doing this? And when you get explicit and ask those kind of questions, and then they're looking at you like, well, stop being so difficult and giving me so much pushback. You're not being a team player.
Yeah. Just do what I've asked you to do, but you haven't been really explicit as to what you want them to do. I'm having trouble talking today, Jen. It's Friday. It's late. So why is this important, right? It happens all the time. Like I know it does. The leadership teams that I work with, Jen, obviously the ones that you work with, we have these conversations with our one-on-one coachees, as well as I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do, but it wasn't at the end, and then my manager took it back.
Right.
A couple of things that I thought were really important that sort of set the context for this conversation is that Gallup, whether you like to measure employee engagement or not, or you think, measuring it through Gallup is the right way or not, it is at an all-time low. In 2024, it is at an all-time low. Not surprisingly, coming out of the pandemic, hybrid work, all that sort of stuff, people's expectations have changed. But employee engagement is low. one of the questions that they ask in that is that I know what's expected of me at work. And that fell from 55% to 44% in 2024. That's a big drop in
Let's just
people.
start with the fact that, first of all, it was at 55%.
Yeah, well, yes,
So it's been a problem for a long time if we're going to
that's
talk about
right.
expectation drift. But now that it's gone down to, what is it, 40?
44. 44.
44%.
It's under 50 now.
You guys are getting worse. Leaders are
Yeah.
getting worse.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The other thing, misalignment can cost up to 5 to 10% of annual revenue, right?
Mm.
So the misalignment on things. Up to 90% of strategies fail due to poor execution and alignment on execution. And productivity loss from misalignment can reach up to 40%. Those are big
Yeah.
numbers.
Big numbers. Big
So
numbers.
it is a thing. It happens. And it really boils down to communication and setting expectations. And are we clear or not? Are we not clear?
Right. And following up on stuff. And
Mm,
when I was doing the research, thinking about this, right, a lot of stuff was popping up because AI is the hot, 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 hot thing. You can't turn on anything, look at anything, read anything. That's 900 articles about AI. But I think that whole frenzy and what it's done in business has put a lot of strategies in limbo, has put a lot of structure in limbo, has created this interesting pressure that's also exacerbated this dynamic because we don't know enough about it. And all we know is it's supposed to do this, this, and this. But I find that the vagueness of how people are leading, just that,
mm.
is creating a lot of expectation misalignment.
Yeah, yeah. And I see it sort of, there's a pendulum on that one. I think there's organizations that are very intentional about it and are doing a good job at leading through the AI, bubble, I guess, if you will. And but many are, they're really dipping their toe. And it's the dipping of the toe that is creating that misalignment of expectations because really people are just doing what they want to do until they're told not to.
Right. And because and here's one of the things I think that really kind of drives this drift is leaders operate from this assumption that because I'm a leader, I should know. I should know
Mhm.
what we're doing. I should know the things. And the interesting thing is that when leaders don't know, because they haven't had firsthand experience necessarily,
Sure.
right? Is that they get vague and then they posture and then they talk in slogans. And slogans are things like innovation, transformation, right? Leverage. We need to leverage AI. Hell, what does that mean, right?
That's right.
What does that look like? And
Yeah.
so when you're putting that in there to your team and telling your team to do something with that, you guys need to be leveraging AI,
Mhm.
right? We talked about it.
Yes, but what does that actually mean?
Right.
And I don't know. Sometimes I find there's a bit of a leadership speak where, right, where it's just like if I throw all these words at people, they're going to understand because they're
Mhm.
big words, and clearly, I'm intelligent, and it must convey all the way down. But the more you dress it up, the expectation, it becomes the more less clear it becomes.
Mhm.
So what is wrong with just saying, you know, unpack what leverage means and say, this is what we need you to do around AI,
Mhm.
right? Wouldn't that solve a lot of the drama around this drift that's happening?
Right. And there's something to be said, and we're totally picking on AI because it's just everywhere, is right. A lot of that should come from the ground up. If you want me to leverage it, here's what that might look like for me.
Yeah.
Okay, do that. Or that's not what I was, and as you hear that, I think that when I say that the behavior that drives it, so if we're going to talk about how do you adapt in this, how do you lead you kung fu this thing, right? Is learn. You are a leader as learner, and know that your expectations may modify, your expectations may shift, your expectations, and your expectations are a thread you have to keep pulling
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of environment. Is where are we on this? Where are we on this? What's that looking like? Well, now it seems like we should be doing less. Let's do that instead, right? Because that's the learning cycle of what are we learning? What do we need to apply? And how does that impact the pivot of the expectation, of the strategy, of whatever it might be?
Right. And so what gets in the way? Because, what you're saying, Jen, makes absolutely total sense and seems pretty simple, right? And we talk about, I think, every podcast, but it's that people's, what they're focusing on is divided, right? So as a leader, you may have, several teams or certainly several team members, and creating that time and that space to have those conversations, to keep focusing back and making sure that they are still on point and that things haven't changed too much. Those conversations aren't as likely to happen because everybody's pulled in so many different directions, right? So
Uh-huh.
that drift happens not intentionally. The drift happens because those conversations aren't being had, right? The time for those conversations aren't being had. And people just, most employees want to do a good job. They just go ahead and do what they think they should be doing, right? And what do you hear the manager saying? Well, why did you do it that way, or why did you do that? Because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but it was vague, and so I just went with it, right?
Right. Oh, I thought this was what you meant, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so
Getting
when that happens, what frustration builds on both sides of the fence, right? The leader's frustrated because the employee didn't do what they wanted them to do. Employees frustrated because they thought they were doing what they were supposed to do. And that drama, right? The drama that we talked about at the beginning, the drama of and really sort of impacting the organization and the trust that you hope they have built, and start eroding it away.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and there's another part of expectation setting that creates drift, which also ends in lack of trust, which is that whole idea of the unrealistic expectation,
Mm,
where it just you find yourself in the ongoing drama of moving the schedule to the right. We didn't hit it, move it to the right. We didn't hit it to the right because
mm.
we've been battling unrealistic expectations about what we can realistically achieve within the constraints we're operating under without having to get any clarity about what's really important and all the other things, right? Which get you into a place of when you get the expectations that people are just like, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and we just watch it. We'll watch it shift a little bit more. Yeah, yeah,
We know it's going to drift. Yeah.
yeah. It also, I think, when you sort of work in this zone of the drift, which I think happens a lot,
Hmm.
accountability, right? So leaders think that their employees just aren't stepping up to do what they should do, and it's not really that they're not stepping up. They're just not doing what they thought they should, or they're avoiding to do it because maybe something is going to shift and the leader hasn't told them it's shifted. So why bother just starting it? And it's just this perpetual cycle, really.
Yeah. And this goes back to part of, well, what's the kung fu around drift? And when you're in this kind of thing is sense making, right?
Yeah.
Is as leaders are in an interesting position, and part of the role of leaders is how are you making sense of all the things and the inputs and all the things that are touching whatever it is you're working toward, right?
Hmm.
Because if you can't make sense, you can't create expectation.
Of course.
And that whole thing of, I think sometimes leaders get frustrated, especially if they're not senior, they're sort of at the director, mid level, and they're sort of
Hmm.
in all of the of waiting for someone else to give you something to tell you, of being visibly frustrated with your own team around, well, let's just until we hear differently,
Hmm.
um, is having strength of character to say, here's what I see. And based on what I see, here's what we're going to do. And then to say to your superior, let me know if I got it wrong.
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that practice of sense making and moving toward that and having confidence in your own abilities to say, this is how I'm reading the room, so here's how we're going to move out. And
Hmm.
until such time I hear differently, and then I got to check up and down. Am my dots connected? Am I drifting? Am I right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's part of the art of this is you don't get off the hook just because it's not clear.
No, no. But I think in what you're describing there is that, going back and checking in, right? And leaders may feel they don't want to be micromanagers. And they may feel that that check-in is more of a micromanagement than not, right? But it's not, right? Checking in and gaining clarity, ensuring that the person is doing what they are doing and right, and that you heard right, and all that sort of thing. That's about alignment. That's about creating alignment up and down, vertically or even horizontally, with everybody who's sort of working on something. And that's not micromanagement. That is absolutely creating alignment.
Yeah,
And
and don't use micromanagement as the catch-all for checking in,
Mhm.
right? Just because 'cause you're checking in doesn't mean you're micromanaging.
No,
Micromanaging is, let me tell you what to do and how to do it.
and when to do it and
And
how
then I'm gonna
fast.
ride your case on that.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm checking in on how's it going. Yeah, and
Hmm.
where are you on it? And
Yeah.
are we still lined up?
Yeah. And if it has to be a micromanagement, that is a different level of, of managing expectations of somebody, right? And that might be true, but in the general sense, it is creating alignment, checking in, making sure people are on the same path.
Mhm,
It solves the end, right? It's all that whole adage of, time spent up front will save you a lot of time at the back end, right? Because if you have
mhm,
to redo work, if you have to take on work as a leader because it wasn't done correctly or up to your standards or whatever it might be, that
mhm.
adds an extra layer of stress and pressure that you don't need in the world today when everything is changing and so fast and we got so much work to do.
Right, and people wanna make good decisions, and when I work with folks, doing the accountability thing, it always starts with expectation, is how good are you at setting expectation? How good and consistent are you at expectations? And a lot of folks who've been doing it a long time are like, yeah, well, I'm actually pretty good at that. Until you go through the rigor of what an expectation really should look like.
Ugh.
And then you sort of get that, because there are aspects of expectations like quality, for example, that it's, it doesn't live inside your process necessarily, right? Quality is going to be there to some degree.
Right.
But then I say, when you are rating somebody's performance on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, 1 being terrible, what's the difference between 3 and 4?
Mhm.
And those are subjective things around quality. And when you are setting expectation for someone and you are trying to help them make good decisions by having a good expectation, right?
Mhm.
What does right look like? What is quality? How do they know?
Yeah.
Right. And there's nuance inside, and it obviously depending on the work, but being rigorous in your thinking around, when I bring this to my team, what are they going to want to know
Mhm.
to make
Mhm.
best decisions to get it done, to execute?
Yes. Flip
And
side of it, I'm gonna just add, I know you're and in 1 sec. Add, are you creating the space for them to ask questions? Poke holes in what you're bringing so that it goes according to plan, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
there was your and in there, sorry.
right? And I'm always aghast at how many people do not deadline things.
Yeah.
Right? We were making big jokes before we got on. We went live about, yeah, well, we talked about it. We had that conversation. But just because we talked about it doesn't mean it's an expectation. Doesn't mean it, right? It didn't have all the things
All
of
the
what good
qualities.
decision making is going to need.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And timeline, deadline, as soon as you can. You need to prioritize this. That's the kind of stuff people get in
Mhm.
a flyby expectation.
Yeah, yeah. And so what does that send? So, Jen, I said, it needs to be as fast as you can, you need to get this done. What does that mean to you?
Sh She wants it before the end of the week.
Maybe, like, over the
End of the
weekend?
day is a
Do I have to work
COV.
Saturday?
The
Yeah,
next hour. Yeah.
it's crazy, and so there's some things that, you sort of level set, right? You can ask for a timeline. You can, from an employee perspective, confirm the outcomes that are expected, right? Like we wouldn't, you and I, from a consulting perspective, wouldn't go into a contract without understanding the outcomes that we need to produce in order as in the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So what are the outcomes that you're expecting? What's the timeline that has to be met? What are the milestones within it that you're going to be checking in? Um, you know,
100%. And this kung fu also sits at the receiver level, right? When you get unclear things, when you get layered on top of, do this and this and this, we're gonna have to do, this is where the sloganing comes in. We're gonna have to do more with less. I'm gonna need you to,
yeah.
right? Is what you're gonna kill my execution because I'm gonna have to make sense of that. And that might not be the right thing, but if I'm afraid to say,
Mm.
what does that mean? You want this and this, and you want these in the same time frames, right?
What's the trade-off?
What's the trade-off?
Mm-hmm.
What's the trade-off? Here's what I see as the trade-off.
Yeah.
And I'm always encouraging young leaders, you got to ask those questions. If you're not clear on what a good decision looks like, that's
Mm-hmm.
on you. That's
Yeah.
on you, because you can't execute if you don't have those answered for yourself. And that unwillingness or that insecurity or that lack of confidence or that lack of psychological safety will also create expectation drift
Mm-hmm.
because people won't ask for clarity. They won't ask for specificity.
Yes. Yeah. So there's two zones, right? There's the leadership zone, having to have them create the space and the psychological safety for those questions to be had. But if, as a leader, if nobody's asking you these questions, you need to stop and ask, what questions do you have? Are you clear? And if you're clear, tell me what it is that I need you to do.
Yeah.
Because open the door for people to ask the questions. And on the other side, in the other camp, is the employees that are doing the work. They need to be courageous, right? You need to step out and say, I don't understand. I need more. I need clarity on this. I need a timeline. When you're seeking clarity, it's not confrontation. And leaders need to look at it as at not being confrontational, but a way to navigate the end result.
Right. And if you find yourself as a leader going, okay, I'm going to open that door, and God, my people, they ask me a million questions. I don't want to open that door. They're always all up in me about this, that, and the other. That's a message to you about you need to do the work.
Yes.
They don't know.
Yes. Exactly. And so then what happens, right?
Well, right. And I think a lot of leaders are under all kinds of pressures to perform on their own, and they don't take the time to think through an expectation. They don't take to
No.
create their own space and their own rigor about, how do I need to position this? Where does this really sit in the rigor of all the things we're doing in the division, or whatever it might be?
Mm-hmm.
They don't think it through. They just want to pass it off and go, hey, somebody gave me this, go do, and I need you to go do.
Yes. Yeah. Or, yeah, and I'm going to say, and if it doesn't go the way you want it to, and now you're on a deadline, what happens to that work? Manager ends up taking it on.
Yeah.
Right. And so you create that learned helplessness and this leadership overload, if you will, where you end up having to take it on, and then you're just, you're mad at the world, right? Because now you've had to work on your weekend to get this done for your boss.
Right. And you can tell in the culture when you've got drift, when you've got a lack of clarity around what we're supposed to be executing on, because the conversations at the water cooler are all things like, well, what do they really want? Have you looked at this strategy? What does it really mean to you? Like, do you know what we're doing? Right. Or are we still doing that project, or is it dead? Right. Those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
When those show up, those are big indicators of, we're not sure. We're all just going to go work on the stuff we know and we're comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure. And drift doesn't happen suddenly. Like it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens gradually. And so the more of those conversations that are being had around the water cooler, it says that your drift is getting larger and more intense. And so you should be listening for it and also creating that mechanism for people to being asked you those questions.
Right. So that's one big indicator.
Mhm.
The drama, the conversations, the whispering, oh God, what the discomfort that's in the air is a big clue. A second big clue is how much rework are you doing?
Yeah.
How much stuff are you doing more than once, right? Because your expectation was bring me a rock, and they brought you a rock, and you said, no, not that rock.
No, I wanted a big rock, not a little rock. I want a pet rock, not just a rock.
A gray
Yes.
rock. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how frustrated, because that's the first thing. I loved it when I first heard that phrase, when people were like, oh, I went in there and all I got was bring me a rock. I'm going to take one in and they're going to go, no, not that rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that creates a whole other level of I don't know if it's mistrust, but when you're told to do something and you're told to get a rock and you keep bringing rocks and they're keeping the wrong rocks, that really it's really affects your demeanor, right? Do you want to
Honey,
bring a rock next time? Probably
bullshit.
not.
Lack of respect. It creates
Terrible.
distance. All kinds of stuff. Let's roll it into the drama factor of,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Drama
Of what that
factor.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what can managers do, right? So really, as simple as it sounds, you need to be explicit. Leaders need to be explicit about what it is that you want. If you want a rock,
Mhm.
what's the size? What's the scale? What's the color?
Does it need to weigh? Where are they going to quarry it from?
Exactly.
What kind of truck are they going to need?
Yes. And as an employee, if you're not getting that, let's not make assumptions, right? Because assumptions are terrible, always. And they're always, I think, always wrong, 90% wrong. So make sure that you're being explicit or you're asking for the explicitness and not implying things.
Right. And if you're in the headspace of, well, they should know, right? So when you say, here, I need this, and you lob it with the general sense of what you think is enough information, a good question to end that with is tell me what you heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Reiterate.
Yeah.
Right. So communication
Exactly.
101.
I think I know what you know, should know this. And so just tell me what you heard so that I know that you heard what I really thought I was saying.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Sort of prioritize from a leadership perspective, I think, prioritize with purpose, right? Making sure that people are connecting what it is that you're asking them to do to something that's sort of a bigger piece of the puzzle, right? To the measurable outcome, how are we going to measure it? If it doesn't fit what you think that should be doing, you should be asking, how does this fit into our strategy? Because again, I love trade-offs, and I love that conversation around trade-offs, because if you ask me to do this, then I can't do this. And are you okay with that? And that's a hard conversation, right? Because we don't want to, we want to do it all. We don't want people to be disappointed in us, but having that trade-off conversation is really, really important. I just had it with a board around, a really big decision that they wanted to make. And
Yeah.
they're making the decision, and the management in the room are all heads down thinking, well, holy, what does this mean to us? Because we can't do that and everything else. And it was one courageous person that said, are you willing to trade off X, Y, and Z for us to get that done? Very explicit.
Yeah. Yeah. And otherwise you're just layering priorities on top of priorities. And part of the Kung Fu is really breaking yourself of the idea that you can do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yes.
only do less with less.
Yes.
And what you're focusing on is individual capacity, personal efficiencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talk about that. Don't talk about more and less,
Yeah.
because that's confusing, meaningless, and irritating.
Yeah. It leads me to another stat that I was thinking that I read. So organizations, lots of them are sort of eliminating or consolidating management roles, which is leaving 37% of employees feeling directionless. So,
Yeah.
you're taking these key roles out, and who's directing the people that are left?
Well, because they haven't created a new expectation
Right.
around role and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at, right? So I'll go back to the AI or the easy ed things right now, because that's what's really showing up. Um, is when they are taking out the coders, and then the guys who do all of the system design, like the testing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Suddenly they've got all this stuff and they've got no structure around how to move through the volume of the testing, and it's just putting more burden on them. So, and there's been no redefining of what is this role going to look like now that this is happening to you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And they're slowly, obviously, picking up on this, but this is where get in front of when things shift, right? What that means, what the implications are for people in terms of shift of focus, more scope on something they haven't
Mm-hmm.
done previously, right?
Right.
What does that really want to look like?
Right. And so from a leadership perspective, I think it's really identifying the drift or the shift when it's happening. So
Mhm.
so being intentionally about something's just moved. Therefore I need to do something different.
Well, and this goes just back to critical thinking. You
Yeah.
know, what are the primary, tertiary impacts of what this expectation might bring to the
Yeah.
table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I have a funny story I'll tell you later. um So unclear expectations, right? They
Wow.
create confusion. They can create conflict. They can obviously create rework. They can
Yeah.
create frustration and disengagement, right? And all of those things are not what you want in an organization that is highly functioning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's the biggest killer of strategy.
Mhm. Yeah. And what's the story you're telling yourself if this is happening in your world? What's the story that you're telling yourself that you're not owning as a leader?
Mm,
And maybe some self-reflection on how
mhm.
you can be more clear and how you can own the clarity of your expectations and
And here's the
sharing that.
thing, it's not that they're not gonna drift.
Mm,
Things change,
for
right?
sure. For
So the
sure.
thing is, name it when you see it. Things have drifted, shifted, stuff has happened. Here's the new context, right?
Hmm.
Own the drift. I know we're gonna, I see drift. I see you guys look confused. This seems like it's all everybody's frustrated. Let's reel that back in. Let's line it back up together and get back around where we need to be so we can execute well.
Yes.
Job one is knowing when you see it, say it and go, oh, let's get a reset. Let's do a do-over, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah. And I sort of go back to if you're in busy mode, you're not going to notice the drift or the shift.
Hmm.
Right. And so you need to create the space and the time to actually think about what's happening, and that space and the time to actually communicate that to others and have that dialogue with people so they are aware of what's happening. Um, because that drift, as I said, it doesn't happen overnight, it happens over time. And so if you're in it, there's things that you're going to have to roll back
Hmm.
right now in order to stem it. Maybe not
Right.
stop it, but stem it. Yeah.
Right. And this is all communication skills.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna kung fu, right?
Hmm.
Communication skills is listening. What are the questions your people are really asking you? What does that really mean about how clear they are? How vague you're being, right?
Yeah.
Um, do the rigor. Do the rigor before you open your mouth about think through your own expectation setting. Everybody, most leaders could be better at setting of expectation, right? If you find
Mhm.
yourself in terminology around transformation, digitization,
Yeah.
leveraging, what does that mean? And how is that showing up in your expectations?
Hmm. So some leadership reflection. Where am I clear in intention, but
Mm,
vague in expectation?
right?
Ask yourself. Where are teams solving the same problem differently? So
Hmm.
again, you all had the same problem given to you, but you heard it differently and went away and did your own thing. Um, what am I saying that isn't what I meant? Where so maybe when am I saying things that isn't actually what I meant?
Mhm.
And where is work being duplicated or misaligned across teams or within teams?
Mm.
Really looking sort of find those areas that you can dig a little deeper into, I think would be an important
Yeah.
aspect
Yeah.
for leaders to
And
think
looking
about.
at where you're under executing, where are you really underperforming, and
Yeah.
what part does what part of expectation drift is playing in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So what do
There
we
you
have
go.
to say is impact? Yeah, there's so much in that, right? It's that being clear as leaders, ensuring that your clarity in your mind is actually coming out and being clear to others. So what are they hearing that you want them to do? And are you asking them to sort of rephrase it back so that you are clear and everybody's aligned? Um,
Are we
alignment.
clear?
Hmm?
Are we being clear?
I don't, am I not being clear?
I'm just thinking about how they're going to be able to kung fu on this. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so
There you have it. I
yeah,
think we got it. I think we nailed it down. Did we forget anything? Is there something popping up in your brain?
no, I was just still trying to parcel it up together. Like there's just so much that can happen in the drift, right? And I think, stepping back, it's noticing when you're in the drift. As leaders, I think they really, try to understand when it's happening, because you
Hmm.
can after you can maybe do a postmortem and say, oh my gosh, we drifted here or we didn't communicate well there, and that's part of it, right? Is sort of knowing yourself and your style and your communication, but try to get ahead of it.
What are some conversations you're avoiding because you're not sure what to expect?
Yeah, and that goes both ways,
Yeah.
right?
Um, it's just where's your discomfort?
Hmm.
Where's your discomfort around what you're doing?
Yeah.
That might be
Yeah.
a good gauge to say, here's where I can start.
Yeah. And there's a truism that some managers will communicate more clearly than others, right? It's just, you know, I
Yeah.
think of a good example of that one today. But they, I think, you need to know your style and, maybe overcompensate a little bit. And again, that doesn't become micromanagement. It doesn't become like it's a child parent relationship where you're telling them every step of the way. But, if that's what it takes you to be more clear and for people to actually be able to do what you want them to do and for the
Mhm.
outcomes to be what you want it to be, that the rock is the right rock, then take the steps, take the time to communicate effectively.
And here's the thing, right? If the awkwardness is I don't want to micromanage, let the awkwardness be okay. I've got it. You've told me enough. I'd
Hmm.
rather have that awkwardness than the awkwardness of I don't really know what they asked me
That's right. That's right. So I'm going to go ask Sally because maybe she understood it.
to do.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna choose an awkward, choose the awkward of all right, I've got it. You've given me more than enough information for me to
Mm,
make this happen.
yeah.
Make
Yeah.
that your awkwardness.
Yeah, and
Because
have the
yeah,
courage to ask, right? Because really, how bad could it be if your manager thinks that you don't know what you're doing but you have the courage to ask for clarity?
yeah,
Only good can come of that. So I think that's, stop
exactly.
the drift before it happens.
Yeah, yeah, and calendar your follow-up for crying out loud.
Yes, that's
Because follow-up
exactly right.
everyone, if you're gonna admit to the leadership kung fu that you fall over on, it might be follow-up. I don't follow up, I say a thing, I don't check on it later. I trust my team, I think they're doing the right thing, and I just had coaching sessions twice this week with leaders who found themselves with people who were making the rest of the organization upset when they thought they were doing the thing because they weren't really checking in. They're like, I trust them. I think they're capable. They're doing, but they're operating in their own universe of expectation.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that whole that I think it's a whole podcast for another day. But that whole notion of trust, right? I trust them, so I'm going to leave them alone. That has a bit of a place, but again, checking in doesn't mean that you're micromanaging. I don't want to use that term again, but checking in is an important aspect. So calendar it in, chat, touch base, just have a quick little tete-a-tete to make sure that people are on the same page with you.
Yeah, nothing's changed here. Everything good there?
Yeah, that's right. What are you doing? Can I have a sneak peek? Whatever it might be, right? Just to reinforce that as a leader, you're there for them. So if they do have questions, that you've created that space. And as an individual contributor or somebody on a team, that that you're doing the right thing, and you just go back to doing what you're doing. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen as much as it really should.
As much as it really should. That's
Yeah.
a fact. That's a fact.
Yes.
This is what keeps Sandy and I employed. Thank you very much.
There you go. All right.
All right. So tell us what we missed. Give us your feedback. Tell us what you're going to practice. Think about your own expectations. And we'll see you next month on another edition of Leadership Kung Fu.
Excellent. We'll see you next month. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca. And you can check out Jen's website at accountabilityatwork.com. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a review on your favorite listening platform. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.